Hey, what's going on, guys? My name is Dave from Go Gamers, and today we're going to be looking at this Xbox Series S model console that has broken traces on the motherboard that was actually sent over by a customer that initially took it to another repair shop. Looks like they did a little bit more damage to this motherboard than what the customer would have wanted, or whatever customer will even want damage on their motherboard. But let's go over to the upper cam and see how we can be able to get this issue resolved. All right, guys, so as you can see, we have a Xbox Series S. Now, here's my brand new HDMI port. When I got it, when I opened this up, the HDMI port literally fell straight out, which shows you how well they put their HDMI port in there when it was initially trying to work on it. But let's go over to the microscope and see exactly what we can see. All right, so here we are under the microscope. All right, so we can see that we have three broken traces on this motherboard. Let me try to get this camera right. All right, so we can see we have this broken trace right here, this broken trace right here, and this broken trace right here. Now you can see when they lifted this off the motherboard that they literally just entirely just broke these traces. Now, here's how we're going to attack this situation. We're going to get the new HDMI port, put it to place. And what I'm thinking is I should be able to scratch off some of the solder masking up here. Well, on this side, it would be this side right here. And we should be able to create a direct copper line connection straight over here. Now, the type of copper wire that I use is insulated copper wire. The type that I use is actually down below in the description below. So that's going to be the type of copper wire that we're going to be using to attack this. The difference between insulated and non-insulated, insulated copper wire is copper. Insulated copper wire is copper wire. That means that regardless if it touches another connection or anything like that, since it has a certain coating of protection on it, it won't short itself out or won't touch another connection that it's not supposed to be touching. With non-insulated, anything it touches is going to create continuity between all the points, whatever it touches. The thing with insulated copper wire that I like is as soon as you touch it with solder in a solder iron, it removes a layer of that insulation. So that means you can go straight from one point straight to the other point and be able to remove that. I only use insulated copper wire. I know some repair techs will say, oh yeah, you need both. I think that's a load of crap because you can use insulated copper wire, and if you want to create that connection to where you want it to be fully non-insulated, which I wouldn't see why, then you just take your solder iron, would intend the solder tip with a little bit of solder, and you clean all of it off, which I don't see why, because you will only need one point and the other point to have that connection so you can be able to have a direct connection to it. And I'll give you guys an example once we get straight into this work. So first, what we're going to do is we're going to clean up this header. We're going to put all fresh new solder around this new header. And then we're going to go ahead and put this brand new HDMI port into place. So let me allow my Hackle solder iron to heat up, and we're going to utilize our flux. So let's first apply flux. The type of flux that I'm using is actually different from my previous videos. I am now using 559 MTech flux. Typically I would use 8341, but since I have now a reliable distribution with MTech flux, this is the type of flux I'm going to be using from here on now, which is just as good as the 8341 flux that I would typically show you guys in my videos. So link will be in the description to the different types of flux that I use. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to turn my fume extraction and we're going to start getting ready to start soldering. All right, so we have the header fully tinted with solder. Now I am going to put the new HDMI header with a new HDMI port into place. So I have my heat gun underneath the header, heating it up. Then we're going to put our HDMI port straight on the header. All right, so before I lay these traces down, we're going to go on ahead and solder down all the connections that we can. Make sure, and I'm also going to make sure that we have some solder on the 3 pins that we need to create the traces for, so it'll be easier once we come in with the copper line to make sure we can roll the solder straight on there. All right, so now it's time to start with the traces. So I have the solder pin, the pins tinted with solder. So let's start placing each trace one by one. Great, so we have all of the traces put into place. Now it's time to clean up our area. We obviously have a ton of burnt flux in this area, so the thing is with cleaning up flux after doing a job like this is pretty difficult, just because you have these traces right here and you don't want to go too crazy and end up tearing off the traces. So it's going to spend a little bit of time of just try to get as much as this flux that we can off, and then I'm going to go in and place some solder masking around the area to make sure we're 100% all cleaned up. All right, so everything looks good. Like I said, I don't want to go too crazy with the cleaning process, but now what I'm going to do is I am going to zoom out and we're going to go ahead and work on getting the solder mask put in place for all the traces. And then we're going to use our UV light to make sure every single point is clear. So let's get started on that to make sure everything is good. All right, so that looks good for the solder masking. I don't need to go too crazy on this one. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take my UV light, and we're going to use this UV light to start the curation process. Also, if you do want to use, like I said, once again, any of the tools that I use in these videos, all the tools and everything that I use is down below in the description. So I'm going to allow this for about, I'm going to let this have at least about a 30 seconds to a minute to cure, and we're going to come back after that. All right, so that is good. So as you can see, these traces are now solid. Everything is good, and I don't have any issues with the way these traces sit. So we are ready to get this thing put back together. See if we do now have a working console. So let's quickly get this tested and see if everything is good to go now on this. All right, guys, so we got it fully put back together. So hopefully this thing really truly does work, and I didn't put this thing back together just to have to take it all the way back down, but we have it fully put back together. I'm gonna power it on just like so. And wow, that was quick. These things turn on fast. Jeez, that was a quick answer. If this thing worked or not. I mean, that was crazy fast. Wow. No loading screens, no nothing. So HDMI port is in there properly. Traces are good. You can see everything works perfectly fine on this Xbox Series S. So obviously we had a very successful repair with this one. So hopefully you guys did enjoy this one. If you guys have any questions or comments, just reach out to me. Let me know. Let me know down in the comments. Also like this video if this video did help you guys out. Subscribe to the channel if you guys are brand new. But I hope to see you guys on the next video. But besides that, I'll catch you guys on the flip side. See ya.